I will admit that I was quite apprehensive about giving Little Heroes, the 1999 three-way split between Home Alone, Look Who's Talking Now and a Roadrunner cartoon, a watch. In part because the film poster for this film reeks of the worst kind of cheapness, and in part because it shares a flippable disc with what was arguably the worst film I've ever seen. I found Little Heroes whilst thrifting a while ago as part of one of those multi-disc collection packs that were usually bundled with a DVD player in the early 2000s as a means of shifting players. I mean, who wouldn't want to spend between £70 and £100 on a DVD player when it comes bundled with 5 DVDs containing 20 quality movies such as Carnosaur 3, Let's Ruin Dad's Day, and Alien Intruder? I'm probably being a little bit disingenuous to this film, to be honest, as it wasn't nearly as bad as I was expecting it to be. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's by no means a good movie, but it's probably best to explain the plot before we get to the meat and gravy of the situation. Little Heroes stars Samson and Hercules as the titular Little Heroes. A tag team duo of wonder dogs who, when they're not arguing amongst themselves over what's on the TV, are stopping muggers and foiling nefarious plots. In short, they're the bestest boys and deserve all the love and attention. They both belong to Charlie, the son of an ex-employee of the tobacco industry. Charlie's dad is set to testify against the tobacco industry because the industry has been routinely shredding documents and covering up evidence that cigarettes cause harm. And they aren't too pleased that Charlie's dad is going to reveal them for the con merchants that they are. So they hire a guy to hire 2 guys to kidnap Charlie and hold him to ransom, and in exchange for his safe return, Charlie's dad has to refuse to testify at the grand jury trial. There's only 2 small problems. The 2 guys they hire are quite inept at their jobs, and they didn't count on Charlie having the Little Heroes on his side. Cue much hilarity as the dogs set traps for the bad guys, bite them on the bottoms at least twice, and try to rescue Charlie at all costs. Will the Little Heroes succeed in saving the day? Of course they will. This film could probably best be described as Man Fall Down Go Boom, the movie, as that is literally about an hour of this 87-minute film. The dogs set a trap, the bad guys walk into the trap, man fall down, go boom, repeat. And it's not intrinsically bad, but it's just so cheaply executed that barring 1 or 2 moments, the whole film just feels really poorly planned. I think the biggest issue that this film faces is that what it thinks is its target audience and what actually is its target audience are 2 very different things. I believe this film was aiming to attract the 4 to 11 crowd. There's cute dogs, some stunts, pizza, which kids think is cool, so I'm led to believe, and even a tiny bit of peril for the older kids. The reality is this film is probably suitable for the 4 to 6 crowd. The jokes are really rubbish, the dialogue is really quite basic, and kids grow out of talking dog movies pretty quickly. Not that this movie is a talking dog movie, but you get the idea. Because their audience scope is so narrow, it means that there's only really a very fine window where this film could really properly be enjoyed by kids. And adults aren't going to get anything out of this really. The tobacco angle, while quite relevant for the time, was by 1999 a bit like flogging a dead horse. And the gags, jokes and pratfalls in this film will at best fall flat with an adult audience, and at worst irritate them. There just isn't really enough meat on the bones here to make a properly interesting standout feature. It just screams of facsimile cinema to me. The direction of this was handled by Henry Char, a man who's still relatively busy in the film industry to this day. Having directed over 20 features, Little Heroes fits in somewhere in the middle of his career. But it looks like for the most part he's stuck to the lower budget side of things, tending to make TV movies and films heavily influenced by other films that were out around the same time. So I'd say there's experience here as a director present, but he's in a very specific place within the cinematic ecosystem. Char also writes most of the films he's directed, having written 15 of the 21 features he's worked on. Which again, to me kind of means this movie could have gone one of two ways. Either pretty good or awful. Luckily, or unluckily, he wasn't alone in writing this feature. Joining him on this was Jess Mansilla, Richard Preston Jr., Thomas Garner and Brad Sergi. Mansilla seemingly is a long-time collaborator with Char, having co-written 12 of the 21 films that Char has written and directed. Brad has some experience in writing, though in a limited capacity. He's got 5 writing credits, 2 of them for short films, and as he plays Slick, one of the bad guys in this, I'm inclined to believe his credit is predominantly due to the improvisational pieces in this film. More on that later. Richard Preston is probably the most qualified writer on this team, and seemingly had the most involvement in this script. He has over 22 writing credits, and by this point he'd come from a pretty established background in B-movie cinema, having penned mainly low-budget sci-fi horror movies and kids' films. He was the one I was hoping would be the most responsible for the writing of this film. And luckily it looks like he was. So, small mercies. Finally, Tom Garner plays the other bad guy in this film. He has 4 writing credits, and like Brad, I'm assuming most of these are pretty much due to his improvisational works. As an actor though, he's done relatively well for himself. His most standout thing for me being that he played Stan Lee's stunt double in Thor. So that's pretty cool. So how is the direction in Cine? Well, it won't surprise you to learn that it's pretty mixed. The direction, in all honesty, is flat. It feels like, for the most part, the cast were pretty much allowed to do their own thing, within reason, including ad-libbing if they felt like it. Because of this, scenes can sometimes look rushed, jumbled, and not particularly visually pleasant. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but that's not a compliment here. It really could do with just a bit more organisation and thought putting into how the cast delivered their lines, their positions within the set, what ad-libs were kept in, and their framing. However, the Cine is quite a step up. Again, I wouldn't say it was perfect or anything, but it's pretty decent enough. There's a decent range of shot types, a couple of nice sequences setting up the traps, and a few nice panning and tracking shots that made the film look a little bit more expensive than it probably was. In fact, the only criticism I have about the Cine is sometimes they let shots run for a bit too long. Though I think that's more down to the fact that they really wanted to get as close to the 90-minute runtime as physically possible more than anything else. That's more of a scripting and editing fault, though, than anything here. I can't really fault the Cine for that. The script too is a real mixed bag. When it's good, it's fine. Hell, it almost borders on the enjoyable. There are a few fundamental problems I take issue with, though. The structure of the script is just terrible. Okay, so with a film like this, the idea should be Act 1 sets up the main characters, their motivations, and begins to creep into what's happening in the main plot. Act 2 develops the characters further and gets well into the plot. Here it would be the bad guys scoping out the house looking to find the best way to kidnap Charlie. And this in turn would all set up the third act finale. Act 3 is the big finale. There should be chases, funny bits, action, peril, everything but the kitchen sink, leading to a satisfying and fun conclusion. Here though, the film opens, sets up the cast, gets the bad guys to the house to scope things out in Act 1. Then Act 2 is the big wacky traps around the house, comedy explosive, everything but the kitchen sink, conclusive finale bit. And then Act 3 doesn't really know what to do with itself. It's much slower and nowhere near as interesting as overly long chase sequences to rescue Charlie take place that don't really do anything and lead to a somewhat unsatisfying and abrupt ending. There's also one massive plot convenience that happens in the third act that makes no sense and really feels like the scriptwriters had written themselves into a corner. So, the bad guys manage to kidnap Charlie. They head off in their van and the little heroes give chase. Unfortunately, the bad guys get away after a certain distance, leading to the little heroes being lost in the middle of nowhere. Sad times. But here's where you have to begin to suspend your disbelief. Well, more than you already are. So, the dogs are in the middle of nowhere, and by chance the bad guys decide to celebrate the kidnapping and ditching the dogs by ordering a Pizza Hut pizza. This film has paid promotion by Pizza Hut. The delivery driver heads out and passes the dogs on the way to the bad guy's secret hideout. From this one simple act of a delivery driver passing them by, the dogs just know somehow that the pizza guy is heading there, with seemingly no other reasoning. So they chase it and arrive at the bad guy's secret hideout. It just seems so forced and tenuous here, and the paid promotional elements are way too rammed in. You can practically hear some representative of Pizza Hut stood behind the cam op saying, "Make them say Pizza Hut more. No, more than that. Can we get more shots of the pizza box in the shot?" It's just really rubbish, which, putting aside the fact that Pizza Hut is arguably the worst chain pizza restaurant out there, didn't exactly help this film's cause any. The dialogue seems to be a 60-40 split between actual scripted lines and on-the-day improv. And that improv fails hard most of the time. If you're good at ad-libbing and improvising lines, it can often result in making the film feel more realistic and spontaneous. But the actors here just aren't that great in delivery. So while some of the ad-libs may have worked in the hands of a better actor, here they just fall flat. Which again only detracts from this movie. The performances in general are quite weak. I mean, it comes to something when the dogs are literally the best performers in this. They're very well behaved and do every scene with professionalism and dignity. In fact, with the exception of the tobacco goons, who are seen for collectively about 8 minutes here, the movie barely has a decent delivery in the entirety of the rest of the film from its human cast. There's just a lot of standing around and a real failure to animate in the cast. And what animation there is often forced over-the-top kooky hijinks. But it's half-hearted, forced over-the-top kooky hijinks. It's embarrassing. Finally, the soundtrack. It's alright. That's it. There's music, it's not irritating, it sounds like library music. It's not too loud or too quiet. Sometimes it feels like it's needed, other times it feels like it's unnecessary. I wish I could be more specific about it, honestly, but the truth is, it wasn't inoffensive. It was just there. It exists. And that's it. I don't remember a single orchestrated piece, I couldn't hum you a line of this film's soundtrack, and odds are I will never think about it again. It's something that exists. That's all. Little Heroes was released on DVD in 2001 in the UK. It was then shoved into the compilation racket almost immediately by 2002. My copy is the compilation version, sharing a side with Let's Ruin Dad's Day. My copy is also absolutely atrocious. It's covered in scratches, smears and disc rot. Honestly, the only reason I still have it was for this review. It'll be finding its way into a bin at the next available opportunity, because it wouldn't even let me finish the film on this copy, because of the disc rot, which had eaten most of the inner ring, leading to pixelation and the eventual breakdown of the film altogether. I had to finish this film on YouTube, and weirdly, the YouTube version is a much more stable version of this film than the DVD one. The PQ is quite washed out in both versions, but I'd say the YouTube copy is the best way to see this if you're desperate to. There's no extras on the disc that I could see, and I can assure you it's both definitely out of print and available in abundance for almost nothing. Little Heroes isn't a bad film, it's just so narrowly marketed that it makes it almost impossible for anyone to truly derive joy from it. I sat through it, it had a couple of moments that amused me, but nowhere near enough to keep me on side. With bland, throwaway direction, poor casting, bad editing, and a muddled and not particularly well-structured script, I'd say if it's a rainy afternoon and you have very young kids who are causing trouble, this'll probably be a good out for you as a parent. If they're any older than 6 though, don't bother. This cost me 50p from CEX, and I think that's probably about as much as I'd be willing to pay for this film. It's background fodder, and the most shocking thing about this film is they didn't just make one sequel, they made two.